a pranayama known as Viloma 1. So what we're going to start with is our basic pranayama setup. I'm including here 3 blankets and a bolster. You might use an additional blanket here if you tend to get cool and you like to cover up. And you might even include something like an eye pillow or a washcloth just over the face if you enjoy that sense of having a little extra coverage for your eyes. But what we'll do is have 1 blanket rolled, and you could even use, if you have a smaller, narrow bolster, you might use that in place. And this rolled blanket will go underneath the Achilles. This bolster will go underneath the femurs, the thighs. And then sort of the crux of the setup here is the way that we stack these 2 blankets. So I have each of these opened 1 time from a storage fold. So I end up with this wide rectangle. And then I do a tri-fold on top of that to make a narrow rectangle that has some length. And the bottom one, when I come onto this, is going to come right up to the top of my sacrum, kind of around my waistband. I won't be sitting on it, nor is it pulled up somewhere in the middle of my low back, but it's going to come right down to the top of that sacral area. The second one, when I come down onto this, is going to cross that 12th rib area. So that way I have my low back kind of curving onto this bottom layer, and then my 12th rib will sort of come onto this top layer of blanket. And then at the top end of this, I find it simple enough just to kind of fold and roll neatly this top blanket to create a head and neck support. But if you are using a blanket that doesn't roll neatly, or you just prefer something else, then use another blanket or a very thin cushion of some sort to fold and have that underneath the base of the skull. So when I come onto this, we'll have the Achilles supported, not necessarily the heels, which will straighten my legs, but just to the backs of the heels, so my heels hang off. The bolster underneath my thighs. And then again, this bottom blanket is sort of just tucked right towards my sacral area. So when I come onto this, you can see my hips are directly on the floor, but that end of the blanket comes right across, say, that waistband area, the top edge of the sacrum. And then that top blanket, which I didn't get quite right, just gonna sneak it down a little bit, will cross right around this 12th rib. And then that last thing I'll adapt here is I'll keep my head lifted and I'll pull this down in a fold. And then as I get to this, I'm going to take it, tuck it under, give it a little roll at its very end, and have that go across the base of my skull. Now, the effect of this is really what we're looking for, right? You know, I'm going to give you a very precise setup for how we're using the props, but the outcome will be that your legs are essentially just getting lifted up from the hips and draped over these 2 supports. Your knees will be higher than your feet so that you feel like you've got a knee bend as well as a hip flexion. At the spine, again, hips are on the floor, and then that low sacral, low back area, right at the base of the lumbar, top of the sacrum, that gets that bottom edge, 12th rib gets this second blanket, and the head is supported. So the pelvis is made very low, and then there's a slight, and I mean slight, stretch from pubic bone to the top of the sternum. So you can see here, if I move my arms out of the way, I'm in a very gentle arching shape. My shoulders fall back. My shoulders are not as high as, say, the front wall of my chest. And then with that slight chest lift, I'm looking here for a comparably slight chin tuck. So when I have this well supported underneath my head, the third eye area, the center of my brow, feels a little bit higher, higher altitude in the room than my chin. However, I want to, that's the outcome. I want to caution you that you then do not have to go into this and smush the chin down even more. So you want to feel like your head is resting, cradled into that support, and it's worth being just a little particular and a little fussy about it. So what I've done is I gave the setup on the floor. I knew where I was going with it, and then I'm just giving it a trial run for a moment. So I'm going to sit on up so I can direct the pranayama without falling asleep. But if you feel like you need a couple of moments to give this more setup, you might pause the video or just catch up with me in a moment. So what we're going to be doing once you get settled is give a little introductory phase of noticing the breath. Breath observation precedes everything else. Then we'll take some time to kind of condition the breath so it's a bit slower and a bit more elongated. And then I'm going to teach you Viloma 1, which means we're going to take the inhale in 3 portions. And then there'll be a pause in between each one, pause at the top. And then the exhale breath will be one continuous flow. So when we do this, I want to just give a couple of highlights while you might still be setting up and getting comfortable, is that the inhale does not have to be drastic or dramatic, because when we exhale, we don't want to feel like we're letting loose the floodgates and you're just exploding that breath out. There's a sort of tempered regularity to all of this. So the caution I generally give is less is more with pranayama. And if anything we're doing becomes uncomfortable for you, where you're feeling agitated or an increase in your anxiety level, set it aside, ditch it altogether, just do a shavasana, or honestly, just go for a brisk walk. A really good form of pranayama right there. It's, again, common as if you've heard me teach pranayama before, that you might just get sleepy and you might come and go a couple times from a really sleepy, disconnected phase and then rise to a level of more wakefulness. That is just the outcome of being tired in an overstimulated world. It does not mean you are bad at pranayama. And you will find that over repetition and practice, like everything else, you will feel a little bit better at staying more wakeful through the duration of it. All right, so I'm hoping you found a comfortable spot. I'm hoping that you can adapt the conditions of your environment to facilitate comfort. So if it's too bright, too dark, too noisy, the wrong temperature, could you make changes in your space for that? And then as we settle into this, can you just catch a glimpse of your breath before we do any change to it whatsoever? It's sort of like you have to sneak up on it. You're not going to surprise it. You just want to suddenly turn your gaze towards it and see what it was doing before it knew it was being looked at. Now, you might have done so much yoga that that's almost impossible, but you know what your breath is doing. As soon as you hear that word, you can assess. But without assuming that it needs improvement, without assuming that there's a better breath on the way, can you simply appreciate the different qualities of your breath as we're here for a few moments? I'll mention a few of these qualities, and they might be like the tempo, the rhythm, the speed of your breath. You might notice the evenness and regularity, or the lack of evenness and the irregularity to your breath. Without changing a darn thing, you're just in witness mode. Can you notice where within your body the breath is most apparent? Is that somewhere like as a sound within the nostrils, or a wheeze in the throat or chest? Is that within the heaving of your shoulders, collarbones, top chest? Does the breath have an influence lower down, belly, back, ribs, pelvis, low back? And are there even more esoteric, energetic qualities to your breath where you feel the flow of your breath somewhere that is not within the organ of your respiration? So you might feel the tendril of your breath moving down to points further afield in a way that you know is not actual respiration, but is just the quality of your breath making itself known. So I hope you found comfort physically. I hope you are acquainting yourself with your breath with no major changes. And I wonder if you can even step back further and see more greatly within yourself a level of energy, a lack of energy. Can you see the pain the injury, the sore spot, your vulnerability? Can you appreciate the bits of you that are working well? Can you notice where your mind has been just before coming into this practice? And has that cast a certain emotional hue over where you are right now? And those greater influences that might not be directly associated with this very day, but how have they colored your experience in this moment? And from all this skill in simply observing, let's begin to provide the activity of the mind, our task of pranayama. So, from wherever you've observed in your breath, do not assume it is somehow a lesser breath or requires great improvement to be useful. You are breathing. But in this moment, very simply, without a rigid technique applied, could you simply begin to lengthen the inhale, to lengthen that little pause that exists at the top of the inhale? And consequently, can you hear lengthen your exhale and that slight pause that exists at the base of the exhale? And again, I am not looking for a technique. There's no count required, nor any measurement. Just can you take the breath that you are bearing witness to and just begin to give it a little bit more to do? Slight elongation for the inhale and exhale. So, this breath you're creating right now, I'm going to call it your regular breath. And as we go through a cycle of Viloma 1, where we put pauses within the inhale and then exhale in one continuous out breath, we'll then do a regular inhale and exhale between each one of those, acting like a spacer breath between each cycle of Viloma 1. And so I'd like you to move through a couple more of these regular breaths, greeting them, getting to know them, and beginning to sense their predictability and their evenness. You might find that as I teach, you breathe differently than the rhythm at which I am speaking. I do not have the advantage of anyone to observe in this moment. So I am not setting the pace to what should be the best possible breath. If you find that there is lag time between my instruction and your breathing, that is not problematic. And the next time that you find your way to the top of a regular inhale and the bottom of your regular exhale, there will be that slight pause. And let's call that the start. So when you're ready, breathe in, but only about 1/3 of your lungs capacity, and then pause. And then breathe in that second third of your lungs capacity and pause. We'll breathe in that final portion, the final third of this inhale capacity. And again, we'll pause. And here with your exhalation, breathe out in one continuous flow, no stopping or starting. And when you reach the bottom of that exhalation, you'll find again a slight pause. Then let's take in a regular cycle of breath. An inhale, a pause, an exhale, a pause with no measurement or control, just a little bit of length. And then when you make your way down to that final bit of exhalation and that very slight pause, let's begin again. We'll inhale about 1/3 of the lungs capacity and pause for just that moment. We'll scoop up that second third of our lungs capacity and then find that slight hold and pause. And then we'll find that remainder of the inhale, taking that breath in to complete the inhale breath, but not to overfill with a pause. And here your exhale from start to stop is a regular, even out breath. It's not a great big gush nor a sigh, nor does it need to be particularly noisy. At the bottom, there's your pause. And here it is, your spacer breath, a regular inhale, exhale cycle. It's probably got some length to it, but you're not measuring or siphoning it in any particular way. At the bottom of that last bit of exhale, there's a natural pause. Let's call this the start of round 3. Breathing in about 1/3 of what can comfortably fit and holding. Then breathing in the second portion of what can comfortably fit with this inhale and pausing. Finally, completing that inhale breath, the final third of this inhale breath, and there's the hold at the top. And then when you're ready to exhale, can you keep it measured and even from start to finish? So it doesn't start as a gush and end as a trickle. And then at the bottom, there's a natural pause. Here's your spacer breath, your regular inhale, exhale cycle. And as you release that exhalation down to its very bottom, that natural pause signifies the beginning of round 4. We'll breathe in about 1/3, holding. The second third, holding. The final third, holding. And then evenness on your exhale breath, not too noisy from start to finish. At the bottom, that natural holding place. And then here again is a regular inhale and your regular exhale. And then down there to the bottom, again, a natural pausing place. It begins cycle number 5. Let's breathe in about 1/3 and hold pause. Breathe in that second third, think middle ribs, hold pause. Breathe in that final third, full but not stuffed, and pause. And then an exhale that's even from start to finish and is not accompanied by the sighing or gushing sound. At the bottom, your natural pause. And then returning to, again, a cycle of an even inhale, a regular exhale. No measurement, no holding. And down there at the base, the bottom, there's your pause. We begin another cycle. So we'll breathe in about 1/3, think low ribs and hold. Breathe in that second third, and you'll find your pause, your hold. Inhaling that final portion of this breath, full but not too stuffed. A pause that is comfortable, creates a little pressure, but no explosion here as you exhale from start to finish. Evenness in the tempo and in the volume of air that you're releasing. Down to the bottom, you find your pause, and you find thereafter a regular inhale and a regular exhale. And then at the bottom, that natural pause signifies our next cycle. Breathing in again, about 1/3 of your lungs capacity, and hold. Breathe in that second third of your lungs capacity and hold, still feeling space for breath. And then inhaling, filling the lungs, think collarbones, but not neck, not shoulders, and hold. And your exhale here from start to finish, even, regular. One complete exhalation down to the bottom, a natural pausing space. And then here's your regular inhale and regular exhale. And at the bottom of that exhale, your pause again, the beginning of our next cycle. Breathing in about 1/3, think low ribs. Breathing in that second third, think middle rib cage. Breathing in that final third, think top ribs, collarbones, easy neck and shoulders. The pause to hold. And then exhaling, releasing slowly from top to bottom, continuous flow at the bottom, your slight pause. Take your regular inhale and your regular exhale breath. Let's do 2 more cycles. So when you're ready to catch up with that next inhale, you're just taking in that 1/3 capacity and pausing. There's plenty of space for more breaths. Here comes that second third. Take that in, hold, feeling fuller, but still space to inhale. And here's the final third where you complete the breath. You take in the remaining space. And at the top, you pause and you do feel full, but not prone to explode. And as you exhale, releasing that exhalation all in one flow. Down to the bottom where you find your pause. And then you begin a regular inhale and your regular exhale. At the bottom of that exhale breath, its natural pause is the beginning of our final cycle. Breathing in about 1/3 and holding. Breathing in that second third and holding. Taking up the final third and holding. And exhaling evenly, regular, complete, all the way to the bottom of that breath. It has its own pause. In that pause, release tempo and just take in a few cycles here, keeping evenness, even though we're not measuring or pausing. Could these next few cycles of regular breathing really exemplify how you can create an even start, pause, finish, pause. Inhale, pause, exhale, pause. Taking in, holding, releasing, empty. And find for yourself a few more moments going through those regular cycles. You're not completely relinquishing the pattern of breathing here, but you're not being so rigid in the control. And you're not putting in that sort of drumbeat behind it that was required to do Viloma 1. And after you find that you have encountered a couple of these regular inhale, exhale cycles, breathing deeply, regularly from start to finish. Once you feel like you've held on to that conditioning for the breath for a few moments, release your grip. And you will likely find that even when now you're not attempting to regulate and control the breath, it's going to carry some of that with it for a few moments. Now you might find in this moment, you need to sit with your breath, or rather lay with your breath for a bit longer. And I hope that you do. And you might also find that that has been just enough focus for you to now crave a lack of focus, in which case I think you're desiring a shavasana. So in either scenario, whether you want to stay with the breath a little longer or slip slide right into your shavasana, be well with that, enjoy it. And if you feel that that really does conclude the time you want to devote to being reclining for this moment, very good as well. You might just gently roll over to your side, pause on your side as long as that feels tempting before eventually coming up to sit and sit quietly for a few moments. To all of your efforts in your yoga practice, I offer my thanks for signing on for this. Namaste. I honor your work, and let's connect again soon.